We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, and we're talking to you on a Tell the Truth Monday in just 30 minutes. However, we get started on a Monday after the Commanders play with my analysis of the game. Time to cue it up. It's time for First and 10.
It's time to get the breakdown started. 1, 2, 3, First up, 10 observations.
And just boom, put it right on the ground.
It's First and 10. Number 1.
We are going to have to multitask this year, which I realize is something that is really much more my job than it is your job as a fan. You don't have a job as a fan. You root, you're emotional, you're invested. That's why we care about sports. We love sports because it lets us ride this roller coaster, and there's only so much real consequence on our lives. Obviously, there's tremendous consequences for, say, Cade York, who no longer has a job. In case you're just tuning in, he got cut this afternoon. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to try to be smart with my analysis, I'm going to have to do two things. I'm going to have to evaluate each game as it comes, and I'm also going to have to try to give some context on the bigger picture of what is happening in the rebuild. Is there anything that gives us pause? Is there anything that makes us go, whoa, okay, hold on. We're directing ourselves towards some kind of North Star, and it seems like we're off a few degrees. And truth be told, in the honor of Tell the Truth Monday, yesterday's game isn't really positive in either. In the context of the game, it was worse than I thought the game would be. In the context of the rebuild, it was a really bad start because the stated short-term goal is to establish a play style, to play fast, to play physical, to not have the kinds of communication issues that have plagued, say, the secondary and other parts of these teams, or this franchise and its football teams for a long time. And they failed on a lot of those fronts yesterday. However, I think it's important context to say that Dan Quinn knows that. He's not going to lie to himself about it in the way that previous coaches and executives here and even owners have, and they're going to get back to work to fix it. And so I think that we have to, again, multitasking is going to be something that we have to do a lot this year. That does not mean in my saying like, hey, there's no reason to freak out about the long-term direction to get your, hey, Josh Harris needs to sell the team, Adam Peters needs to get fired signs out. That would be utterly ridiculous. It's been one game, but that game was not good. And it was not good because they didn't do one of the biggest things that they claim to preach.
Number 2.
They have finished Fridays in Ashburn. They didn't have a finish Sunday. The third down defense was, can I say, I think I can say this. I'm gonna put up this on the screen on YouTube. And I'll say a previous or an alternate version. We're looking at the right there part. I don't know if people can read that, but it says the third down defense was booty. That's how we're gonna describe that. You simply cannot exist in a world where you force that many third downs and then give up that many. All in all, there were 15 total plays that were run. There were 17 third down scenarios. There were a couple of penalties, so a couple of those plays get wiped off. By the NFL's NFL Pro website, I got 9 of 15 were 3rd and 6 plus. Most of those were converted. It wasn't good. And they did it in all kinds of ways. It was bad execution. It was poor discipline. There was poor discipline in terms of play style and coverage. There was poor discipline on the first third down of the game. They get a stop. And there's okay enough coverage. Like Forbes does enough to make it a difficult throw. Baker outruns or outthrows McMillan. A great throw. It's maybe a touchdown, so not exactly perfect. But none of it matters because Cleveland Ferrell gets an illegal use of hands because he gets up underneath dude's face mask and chucks him in the chin. Later, you got a too many men penalty. It would have been 3rd and 11. It's 3rd and 6 instead. And then Mike Sanders still gets lost in traffic, and they get a conversion because it's a lot easier to run that route concept on 3rd and 6 versus 3rd and 11. Not finishing in terms of pressures. And, like, yes, there was issues in coverage, but there's a lot of this where they're asking the coverage based off the amount of blitzers and pressures coming to hold up for, 2.5 seconds, and hey, we're going to get home. They did not. John Allen missed a couple of different sacks. Deron Payne had a couple of potential opportunities. Frankie Louvu had at least one off the top of my head. Bobby Wagner, I believe, had an opportunity at one point to get a sack or to get a pressure and couldn't finish. So it's just a lot of lack of discipline, lack of execution, and it comes in a game situation that you just need to be straight up better if you have any remote chance of winning in this league. And it's actually why I appreciate what Dan Quinn said after the game, because he was asked about discipline, and because he had said last week, like, oh, if we're the more disciplined team, we're going to win. And someone was like, well, you had the equal number of penalties, and you had no turnovers, which was equal. So did you think you were the more disciplined team? And Dan was like, no.
Yeah, discipline will win it, right? That's what I said. I thought it probably goes further than that. Discipline can also mean holding the right leverage, in a coverage. It can mean, the right gap sound. So I'd say it can probably expand bigger. But sometimes one thing compounds the next. And so when the time of possession, for instance, is that out of whack, I think that's directly correlated to third down. And they were probably close to 70%, and we were about 25%. So it wasn't like one team just controlled the ball on first and second down. There were, third down was a big part of this. So I didn't feel we were, out of whack of penalties. We had one that looked bad, blocking back towards the goal line on the long play. But it probably goes deeper than just, penalties and that, probably the whole thing through.
By the way, that penalty on Olamide Zaccheaus, the crackback block or whatever they called, that call sucked. That call was terrible. That call was so soft, so weak. He barely touched him, and they were well out of the play at that point. Anyway, that's not the point. I should be more disciplined and stick to the talking points. The point is, they didn't finish yesterday, especially defensively, and within the context of that game, more than anything else, and we'll talk more about Jaden, and we'll talk about BSJ, and we'll talk about Forbes, and we'll talk about all the individual guys and some of the other stuff as we roll on here in 1st and 10. But number one, we have to multitask. Two, within the context of yesterday's game, finishing and the lack thereof, specifically on third down, is the absolute biggest thing. However, before we get into some of the other stuff from the game, I do want to say this.
Number 3.
I have not lost 1 ounce of faith in the plan because I still trust the people in charge. And I realize for a lot of you today, you're like, that looked like everything I've seen before. And boy, let me tell you, it sure did. Your eyes were not lying to you. But what did change, what was different than the Rivera era, what's different than the Bruce Allen era, is what happens next, what happens after the game. It's not a mopey Jay Gruden at the podium being like, oh man, I can't believe, or he just is like looking at the play sheet being like, these plays work on paper, why can't I get anybody to execute them? It's not the Ron Rivera thing where he's chasing a million narratives and doing whatever the heck he did at post-game press conferences. It's Dan Quinn getting up there and being like, yeah, that wasn't very good. And there's a lot of lessons to take out of these games and this game. And if we do not take those lessons, then this wasn't worth it. If it is, or if we do take those lessons, then we can look back on this as a point of growth. It's that kind of mentality that actually rallies a building together that makes you able to string together good performances over time. This team is tremendously undermanned. And I think that was on full display yesterday in areas that we're going to talk about, some of which we knew. And by the way, that's the other part of this. I cannot tell you on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday going into a game, hey, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. It could all be bad. And then all those 3 things happen, and then me get in here on a Monday and go, oh my God, how did that happen? We know how it happened. So why am I going to sit here and pretend otherwise for shock value or whatever the heck other people do when I'm not saying on our station or on the Fan or whatever, but we know it happens, and maybe it even happens here sometimes. But I'm not going to do that. That's not my show. That's not me. That's not how I do this. This is going to require patience and discipline. That doesn't mean that they get a pass for everything. We're going to hit on all of those things that don't get a pass next. But it does mean some stuff we're just going to say is bad, acknowledge it, shrug, and move on. Because realistically, this is a team with some off-season problems because it was impossible to fix everything that was wrong with this roster in one off-season, which is all this group has had. We get into Emmanuel Forbes, Benjamin St. Juice, Jaden Daniels, and some other really important things that they've got to clean up from yesterday. Next, as we continue our 1st and 10 on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. We are going to need those YouTube comments, the comments section here in just a little bit, as well as your phone calls at 301-230-0980, because we're going to do our first edition of Tell the Truth Monday, where you get to call in and tell what you think the truth is about the game. And we're going to get into some of that from me right now. Less big picture, more focused on this game as we continue our 1st and 10.
Number 4.
In the short term, yesterday, we saw a lot of what I would expect in a Washington-Tampa game in week 1. And this is where, like, talking about the short term and the long term run headlong into each other. Cornerbacks, yeah, we all knew that could be a problem. Mega exacerbated yesterday. Godwin's an all-pro. Evans is an all-pro who's going to the Hall of Fame. And they had their way. There's just too many times that they are in man coverage. And, like, you can't not play man. I mean, I guess you could, but you have to then try to guard them in zone. And sometimes when you're in zones, you have to kind of latch on to guys and actually, cover them. And there was in both man and zone situations yesterday where Chris Godwin was just better than Mike Sainer still, where Mike Evans was better than Benjamin St-Juste, where both of them were better than Emmanuel Forbes, where Jalen McMillan was able to manipulate space and coverage, and guys like Quan Martin are lost a little bit. Jeremy Chin not necessarily covering the amount of ground. Like, Chin was pretty quiet yesterday. So from the DBs, but specifically the CBs standpoint, I knew that it was going to be a trouble. I'm only judging them so much on yesterday, but I want to talk about Forbes and St-Juste separately in a moment. But ultimately, young talent, worth finding out if they were any good when they inherited them, because you weren't going to be able to get really good outside corners in free agency to sign here or take them with the draft picks because you had to spend those draft picks in other places. Same was true in wide receiver. I think they needed more from not Terry McLaurin yesterday. And yet, I don't really fault Adam Peters for the state of the wide receiver room because Jahan Dotson was supposed to be a part of it. And when Jahan Dotson didn't play well in training camp, they were like, oh, crap. Well, this sucks. Let's trade him and make sure we get a pick that we can use to maybe replace him next year. But what are they supposed to do? And you can be like, trade for Brandon Ayuk. And I would tell you, you're drunk. That wasn't on the table. So, they anticipated 2 first-round picks being the head of their receiving room. One of them wasn't very good. It's not their fault. They didn't draft him. They got draft capital for him. So some of this stuff, and then the last, I would say some of the stuff you could anticipate. And then the last thing that I would say you could have anticipated is real life harder than fake life, a.k.a. Jaden Daniels having to read a real Todd Bowles defense versus the vanilla stuff that he got to read in the preseason. Very different. And I will tell you, I want more preseason reps for this team next year. And yes, you are allowed to remind me of that if I say otherwise next August. Okay, let's do it. Let's talk about Emmanuel Forbes.
Number 5.
If I were to say I'm not giving up on Emmanuel Forbes based off this performance, you're going to ultimately get mad at me and not listen to anything else I say. I'm going to ask you to listen to everything else I say because I'm not giving up on Emmanuel Forbes after this one performance, but he's got about a 1 week more leash. Because before the double penalty play, the play that ultimately gets him benched. Now, there might have also been an injury situation, apparently, but he did not play again after the big play where Jalen McMillan ran into him and he got the face mask and the PI. That was Emmanuel Forbes' last play, and whether he was benched or injured doesn't really matter. Before that play happened, I wrote down in my notes, he's not playing hard enough. That's a deal breaker. That's a no-no. You can't. It's one thing to get beat. It's one thing on technique. And there's a couple plays in the game where, like, he's right where he's supposed to be and, guys make good plays and even the kind of short passes that they're willing to give up because, hey, we just don't want to get beat deep on the explosive stuffs. Fine. Okay. But you can't not put your body in there in the run game. You can't kind of let the tackle come to you. No, you go hit somebody. You can't not be physical enough at the point of attack. Like, there's some stuff in this game where Emmanuel Forbes does not stick his nose in and get stuck in the way that Dan Quinn and Adam Peters and Joe Witt Jr. and Tommy Donatel and staff up and down, the coaching staff to the front office expect you to play to be a Washington Commander in 2024 and moving forward. And if that's not going to happen, you got 1 week to turn it around. And if you're not going to turn it around, you're going to be on the bench or you're going to be on another team. And so when I say I'm not willing to give up on Emmanuel Forbes after one bad week, he started camp poorly and he turned it around and he really played well late. So if he had an off day yesterday, wasn't feeling right, whatever, I'm giving you one more do-over. And then we got to have a talk. And I realize for some of you, he's 17 games last year. Last year doesn't count. Last year was as poorly managed of a rookie season for a first-rounder as you can get. That position was horrendously coached. His confidence was shot. And by the way, that carried over to this game. And that's something they're realistically going to have to deal with. They're going to have to find a way to reach him and be like, hey, dude, you're good. Go be good. Because you could see him on some of the stuff where he gets beat, where he just starts to hang his head and his body language is terrible. And you're just like, man, that doesn't work at that position. You have to have the memory of a goldfish. And so for Forbes, yes, there's bad technique. Yes, there's bad mental mistakes. Yes, there's bad whatever technical stuff that we can talk about with many corners across the NFL. But it's the effort and the attitude and the approach that need to get fixed. Otherwise, he is not going to be long for here. And that's stuff that I had down in my notes before the big penalty where all that stuff came together in cataclysmic disaster.
Number 6.
Benjamin St. Juste is a different story. He was stuck in. He was competing his face off. He just didn't do the right stuff. Unfortunately, that's been a bit of a habit for Benjamin throughout his career. But again, if he can understand it and fix it, and it gets better week over week, and he's not getting punished to the level that you get punished when you make those kind of mistakes against Mike Evans, future Hall of Famer, well, there might be a salvageable player there because eventually, hopefully, he's not CB1, he's CB2. And I thought this from Dan Quinn was super interesting, kind of on that ability to go, hey, what's lost here? What's got messed up here? And I do think the contrast he's drawing, even though he won't say it, I will, is the way Benjamin got beat versus the way Forbes got beat.
Yeah, we just rotated people around, and I think like it comes from a place of competing and knowing how to, and knowing when to make the right decisions into those spaces. And so that's what we'll work on. Technique-wise, like usually you ask a player, what'd you see? And if they know how to correct it already, then you're in a good spot. And that was Ben on the first touchdown to Evans. I need to turn the other way. I need to look, okay, you got it. If you ask a player, I don't know, that's a bigger concern. And so those guys know the things they need to work on, and that's why it did sting. And there was a lot for us to work on. But third downs, Nick, I would say collectively defensive. I wouldn't put it on one versus the other.
You hear him say, oh, we asked Ben, he's got it. He knows what he needs to do. For instance, he turned the wrong way on that first touchdown to Evans. And I actually was watching the tape and I stopped and I was like, let me go listen to Quinn's press conference. I'm wondering if he was asked about this. And he said it and I was like, that's what I thought. I love being right. But more importantly, right, BSJ is actually in good position, in good phase. He's where he's supposed to be, but he turns the wrong way, and that means he can't find the ball. On the second one, he actually is the right way. He tries to play through the hands, and he just whips, and he's got to actually make a play. Again, finish. That's what he's got to do, but you can live with that, and if you do not finish perfectly against not Mike Evans, the consequences aren't so severe. Forbes, however, it feels like they asked him, hey, man, what do you got to do? What's wrong? And he was like, I don't know, man. And, well, that's why he didn't play anymore.
Number 7.
I can't believe it took us to number 7 to get to Jaden Daniels, but it took us to number 7 to get to Jaden Daniels. The first half was much more scramble-filled than the second half. And of those scrambles, I think I had 5 marked down in the first half. I would say definitely 3, if not 4 of them, were actually the correct decision by Jaden. Coverage was there, pressure was coming, some combination of those. 2 of those, Wiley got beat inside. He was pretty good the rest of the game, but he got beat on 2 in the first half, and Jaden has to get out immediately. There's a couple other ones where it's like, okay, you can get out here, but you could also check it down later in the down, like let's escape to pass. And then in the second half, different story. Second half was a completely different offensive structure, everything. And I felt like he missed a couple of big opportunities. And that's a little more worrisome. But also, again, it's a rookie quarterback trying to figure out Todd Bowles' defense. And he got flushed a bunch in the first half. So he's probably a little bit trigger shy / scramble happy. So I think that he has obviously tremendous ability. We see the athleticism. He turns negative plays into explosive plays. That alone is an invaluable skill as a scrambler, but clearly he's got to be able to do it better from the pocket. I do think that what he'll see next week and moving forward for most of this season will be far easier to do that against than a Todd Bowles defense in your first start.
Number 8.
Terry's day. I'm sure that we're going to get some talk about Terry and Tell the Truth Monday. Here's the truth about Terry McLaurin. He very easily could have had 5 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns yesterday. Jaden missed him on the obvious one on the first play of the second half. He just overthrows him. That's a 70-yard touchdown. There's another 65-yarder that Terry is screaming wide open. Jaden's looking right at him, and I have no idea why he does not throw that football. It's a dagger, and he wins, and I don't know. There's a couple other targets in the game that are well designed for Terry, and Tampa was basically like, there is no way in hell that dude is beating us on this play. So I actually didn't hate the Terry plan, although I would have liked to see a few more force feeds to Terry, a jet sweep, a screen, and I would like to see that happen early in the game because he's a tone setter. That said,
Number 9.
I think Cliff Kingsbury's not asleep at the wheel. I saw adjustments. I saw stuff that made sense. I saw stuff that made me happy. Yaya Dubin's giving everybody hell in the first half. So let's go make sure that we have a tight end or a back to go chip him. One of the first big plays in the second half, Austin Eckler gets one hell of a shoulder into Yaya Dubin on a chip. Throws off his whole rush. I love that. Let's be smart with our protection. Let's try to get the ball out a little bit quicker. Let's use our quarterback run game. And if you want to talk about an offensive coordinator that's trying to give you a freaking spark, in the first drive of the third quarter, first play, they go deep to Terry. They did the direct snap where Jaden lined up and shotgun over the guard, try to create an explosive run. They threw the ball deep to Terry again, and they had that throwback play where Luke McCaffrey should have thrown it back to Jaden Daniels and decided for whatever reason not to. If he throws it back to Jaden, that thing's probably a house call because there is like 3 Bucs on that side of the field and about 5 Commanders blockers. That was... It had to be a lateral because it was a forward pass, but that's how the play was set up. Man, that sucks. But Cliff was trying. Cliff was in his bag, and they just couldn't generate the explosives, in part because the players didn't execute. It's not Cliff's fault Terry overthrew or got overthrown. So I like the fact that we have an offensive coordinator who's, awake.
Number 10.
And then last but not least, this we'll have to get into more later because we're over time, but there's a lack of cohesion defensively, both in coverage and communication, and in how they're playing pass rush lanes and rush lanes up front. They have got to get that cleaned up and just be smarter. Like if you're a Daron Payne and you're a defensive tackle, and you have a defensive end next to you that is playing a wide split, like he's way outside where the tight end would be, you can't jump inside on a run. That gap is way too big, and that happened multiple times for big plays for the Bucs. So it's those types of details that you got to get locked in, cut down on some of the freelancing on defense, and then obviously the communication and cohesion on the back end that we're going to have to talk about a lot more as the week goes. All right, that's our 1st and 10. Up next, you. It's time for Tell the Truth Monday at 301-230-0980. We take your calls on what you think the truth from the game was next on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. I'll pull up the chat in a second as you guys can get in on the stream on Tell the Truth Monday. Yes, that's right. Tell the Truth Monday, where you tell the truth about the Commanders' performance on Sunday. Obviously not good on the score sheet. Big old loss to the Bucs. I gave you my 1st and 10, but let's see what you got on the phone lines at 301-230-0980. Bird, you got the first ever word on Tell the Truth Monday. Get us going on the Team 980 listener line.
You ain't never seen him do it. You ain't never seen Terry do it.
Is that English?
So what we're going to do is keep going to try 6 years, hoping that this dude's the answer.
If you're going to call the show and you're going to be the first ever to do a segment, can you get Anthony, what are we doing on the phone connection there? What are we doing with English language? I could not understand. Was it that me? Is my headphones
Nah,
bad?
so I think he was on hold and he was talking to someone and he didn't realize he actually was on now.
If that's how this segment's going to go, then we're never doing it again. I have faith that we can do better than that. Let's try again. It's Tell the Truth Monday on the Hoffman Show, where you call in and you tell us the truth about the game. All right, let's go to Jason in Omaha. Jason, tell us the truth about what you saw yesterday when the Commanders took on the Bucs.
Kingsbury has the lack of identity so far. That's the truth for me. I know you say you don't think he's sleeping at the wheel, but I don't know. It seemed like their plan wasn't sound to begin with, and they're running QB powers in the middle of the field instead of running that stuff closer to the goal line and stuff like that. It just seems like they didn't have a plan.
I would say that's
we've been working on this.
That's part of the plan, Jason, is to use the running quarterback to run. Let's try this again. Let's try. Oh God. Let's try. Is it Ba? You might be our last chance. That's some energy and a clear phone line. All right, tell the truth about what we saw in Commanders and Bucs.
I'm gonna tell you something clear. Mr. Craig, first of all, I'm not happy about your 10. I'm gonna put it like that. There is some point I don't agree. I already told Anthony. First of all, I'm an original caller. I was calling when John Thompson was sitting on the table. The rip coach. Let me get back to this thing. Let's be clear. I'm putting it on the feet of DQ and Peters. You kidding me? Hoffman, you just say you got the best offensive coordinator or whatever. This offensive coordinator don't know what the hell he was doing. We played the whole first half. The receivers got 0 yards. Are you kidding me? We got Baker Mayfield taking us to school. You tell him I was expecting something from DQ. And you know what I want you to do, Craig? You got to stop blaming the players. I want to see the coach what they can do. Stop blaming the players. The young ain't going to be all right.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Who plays?
Go ahead, bro. I'm listening.
Who plays?
The players.
Okay, thank you. Next call. Let's go to Ron. Ron, you have promised to use complete sentences. Please tell the truth on this Monday before I bag this segment forever, which should be a great radio segment because the title was made for it, and yet this is what we've dealt with so far. Ron, complete sentences. Please save us.
Craig, I love your analytical nature. I appreciate – there's not much I could add because you hit the nail on the head with everything. But I think at some point the administration of the team has to come to the fan base and say, this is a rebuilding. We're in a rebuilding mode. We don't have the players to compete for a championship, even with Jaden. We don't. I don't want to see my $1 million quarterback running around like that for 80 yards because he's going to get hurt. Or you might just end up having a career-ending injury. I've seen that show. It happened in 2012, right? So what I want to see is I want to see them rebuild the draft from good old-fashioned They need a pass rusher. And those boys in the backfield that still don't know where they're going, sorry, they've had enough time. We'll give them this year, and then they're all gone. They're all
Ron,
gone.
I got no problem with that. And I appreciate the call. We have a ton of people calling in, so I'm going to cut you off there. But I appreciate the call, and I don't disagree with you. Like, if I'm Adam Peters, I'm calling someone at some point. Let's see how they go the first couple weeks of the season. But, like, if this is not going well by week 4, I'm calling someone and being like, look, we're on background. This is not on the record, because at the end of the day, it's not on the coach to be like, hey, we're in a rebuilding year. He's got to get in that locker room and motivate those guys every single day. Because while, yes, the collective of them is not going to win 10 football games, I'm pretty sure, this year, certainly if they play like they just did, he's got to figure out who is a part of what they want to do moving forward. And there might be some guys that they didn't expect, and if they don't get the best out of everyone, they can't make those types of evaluations. But if I'm and I want my head coach lost in that, right? Like, I want my head coach thinking he's taking the field every single week to win. If I'm the general manager of the team, do at some point I make a call to a reporter and go, hey, just so we're clear, this is a rebuild, and we got a long way to go. And, like, make sure that I'm controlling that temperature to a point, and trying to, I don't want to say manipulate the media, but, like, be very clear-eyed to the media, thus making sure that the media is clear-eyed about what they are covering. Hell yeah, I'm making that call, because Ron's absolutely right. They need pass rushers. That was very apparent yesterday. Pass rush win rate is one thing. The ability to finish and get sacks is another. Like, that is a production position typically, and they don't have dudes that have done that at a high level, and it showed up yesterday. I will also say Tampa's offensive line is really, really good. And that's probably something that we should have talked about more last week. Like, they were good last year and got better, both through addition and internal improvement. They also upgraded schematically to make their lives easier because Liam Cohn's good at his job, their offensive coordinator. And so all that stuff comes together yesterday, along with the bad corners, to say, like, yeah, we've identified some things that are next year problems, off-season problems. But what I haven't heard yet is an actual cohesive plan from anyone on how that stuff was supposed to get done this offseason, because it doesn't exist. They used their high draft capital in other places, which was perfectly reasonable. They used their third-round pick on an offensive tackle. We'll see how that goes. If it doesn't go well, they'll use their first-rounder probably next year. They'll draft a bunch of corners. But they can't make free agents sign here. And so say, you should have signed whoever. You can't make them. They're free agents, and this team was not going to be a contender. And in terms of drafting, they weren't going to get guys who can impact day one, because that's not how the league works. Look at rookies across the league at multiple positions. They struggle. That's how rookies work. It's a young, inexperienced football team for the players that'll be here long term, and guys that other teams didn't want to re-sign for the vets. This is going to be the result sometimes of that. All right, we got full phone lines. Tell the Truth Monday continues next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. All right, let's get back to the phones. Tell the Truth Monday, 301-230-0980. Let's go to, let's see. Let's go to Aubrey. Aubrey, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show. Go ahead. Tell us the truth about what you thought from yesterday. Aubrey? Good gracious. Let's go to Robert. Robert, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Ooh, good Lord, this has been brutal. How you doing, Craig?
I was doing better 10 minutes ago, Aubrey, if I'm telling you the total truth, but it's what we're doing here. It's Tell the Truth Monday. But you sound
It's
coherent
all good,
and you have
brother.
a good connection, so fire away.
Let's make it happen, man. So during the Ron Rivera era, we had a problem with the secondary not being able to cover anybody, and we didn't have a pass rush, and the offensive line and the offense was putrid. What has Adam Peters improved this year during the offseason? The truth of the matter is, if Ron Rivera would have done something like cut Johan Dotson and sign a wide receiver that was not active for day one, we would be killing him right now. This man had a plethora of draft picks. He had a lot of salary cap space, and he did less with more. He signed a middle linebacker in Wagner who's getting slower by the day. Nobody has made an improvement. Now, Jaden Daniels, someone will say, well, he got a quarterback. Any team without a general manager who was picking number 2 would have picked Jaden Daniels. It was going to go Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. You get no credit or love for that. But everything else, you've done absolutely nothing. Now, a year from now, I might call up and be the biggest fool in D.C. because we're winning championships and playoffs. But right now, what Adam Peters has done, he does not deserve anything because he has not improved one area. And by the way, we're on our 12th field goal kicker, and we're not even into week 2. Same thing that happened in Ron Rivera era. So that's the truth of the matter, that we're still in the same place besides the quarterback, which is a huge example. I get it. But still, the rest of the team.
So, Robert, here's my thing. Like, I actually, on a baseline level, don't disagree with a lot of what you said. I just think that the context is really, really important, which is they're not trying to take shortcuts to be good this year. They don't care if they're good this year. They care if they're good in 3 years because the chances of winning a Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback are slim to none. So you take the best players available knowing that you're going to turn over your roster. Like, they turned over 60% of the roster. It's more than anyone else in the league.
Craig, can I respectfully counter?
Of course.
All of that is true. However, when you come out from a PR standpoint, when you come out and sell us that it's a new day, when you come out and tell us that we're making improvements, then that's, as a fan, all of us work full-time jobs. I mean, you have the ability because of the industry that you're in to go inside and look at film. I don't. I have to take the word of the people that I'm listening to, and all of us were told that this was a new day. If we would have been told, hey, guys, we're getting a quarterback, but we have to scrap this roster, it's going to be a couple of years, we're smart fans, we would have said, okay.
Well, Robert, here would be my counter to your counter. Who else you been listening to? Because that's what I've said all along.
Okay, hey, well, you know what? Again, brother, actually this year I got a big promotion, so it's been hard for me to listen during the day. I actually took today off, so this is my first time I've been able to listen to you and call in at the same time.
One, I need you to take off work and call more often because I enjoy your calls. 2, we have a podcast, Robert. There's no excuses. If you want it to change, you got to be the change you want to see in the world, Robert. We got a podcast for you. We're on demand anytime you want on your schedule. But here's what I would say to the substance of your point. When you are as bad as they were last year, and when the goal is to build through the draft, and you're going to get blue chip guys through the draft, it's going to take multiple drafts because by nature and by the way, even if they got multiple blue chip guys in this draft, let's say Jerzon Newton, who didn't even play yesterday, turns into a blue chipper. Let's say Sainer still turns into a blue chipper. Let's say Jaden turns into a blue chipper. That's awesome, but it's going to take multiple years because they're young, and that is the nature of the league. So I hear you, and it's going to be ugly early. I'm not saying that you're wrong in what you saw yesterday, but I would tell you what you saw yesterday is because the mess that was made before Adam Peters got here has still not been cleaned up yet because it was too big of a mess to clean up in 1 year.
Yes, sir.
That would be my retort.
And the last thing I'll say, Craig, because I know you got to take other callers, I am hoping that I'm wrong. You understand that. I'm not happy about this. but I wasn't upset yesterday because this is kind of what I expected. But hail to the Commanders. Let's keep it going, buddy.
Hey, I appreciate it, Robert, and listen to that podcast. It's available in your feed whenever you want it. All right, that's Robert with us, taking the day off from work, calling in. We love that. Let's go to Terrell in Baltimore. Terrell, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show. Tell the truth Monday time. Tell the truth.
Man, Craig, I was sitting here like, ooh, pick me, because the guy before you, he was going to make a point, and I wanted to counter with that. So, one, don't kill the segment. Just choose better people. Here we go. So, listen, he was talking about people that have employment and work jobs right now, right? So let's say this. If I came to you at your job, who's ever listening right now, I'm posing this to you. If I came to you at your job and said, I'm going to bring in a new person, and they're going to do the job today. Brand new. They've never worked here before. No experience. You got experience. But I'm going to bring them in here, and they're going to do the job. What do you expect out of them opposed to you who have experience? You probably don't think their performance is going to be that good, right? This team just flipped over like you said, 60% of the players. New coaches, new ownership, new everybody. What did we expect? Like, I looked at different teams play yesterday. Detroit. That team's largely a team that's been together. They were, a high-caliber team. It took them a very, very long time to rebuild that. But then coming back in week 1 of this year, they look great and prepared because those guys are pretty much been playing together. The coaching has pretty much been the same. It's well-oiled. Kansas City, another one. You know, that's what you expect with experience, with people who have been there. This is a stopgap year for the Commanders, people. Repeat after me. Stopgap. It's new coaching, new players. They have to get this scheme together. Now, I will say, the way the interior of our defensive line got ate up, I didn't like that. I really thought St. Juice and Forbes, they are who we thought they are. They're going to get ate up by a Mike Evans, people. That's going to happen to them. That's going to happen to people, and I really wish I think Ron Rivera was probably a Cowboys fan, low-key, to pick Forbes over Christian Gonzalez. Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's a rough one. Terrell, I got to let you run, but great points because we got a bunch of more calls. But I appreciate it. And I will say, too, I think a lot of the specific problems in yesterday's game, some of the big plays are because of a lack of cohesion. It was the last point I got to in 1st and 10. I didn't have enough time to make it in the fullness that I wanted to because I yapped too long on other stuff. But, like, learning how to play next to the guy next to you is a really important skill, and learning how to play within the scheme and understanding where the strengths and weaknesses are and where to take your chances, where I need to be a little bit more conservative. Like, this was the first time they all got to do this. There's no cohesion here. So, again, if you want to say, hey, I think they should have played a little more in the preseason, I'll hear you on that because I think they should have played a little more in the preseason. But that still is only going to move the needle so much. Against a Tampa team, by the way, Baker knows this scheme. He's played with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin for a bunch of years. Defensively, they've had the same infrastructure in place for a lot of years. Guys like Levante David and Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield up the spine of that defense. So you had a team that had cohesion and talent against a team that lacks talent and has zero cohesion. That's what happened yesterday. Anthony, which line number should we go to for our final call? We got 1, 2, 3, or 8. We got 1, 2, or 3. Eight hung up.
I will go 3.
3. All right, Doug in Richmond, you get to wrap us up. Tell the truth Monday. What you got?
Appreciate you taking my call, Craig. I was really hoping that you wouldn't end it so soon when you got fired up earlier. But anyways. Yeah, I think a lot of fans just kind of lost the grasp of that this Bucs team was a few snaps away from being in the NFC Championship game. And the fact that we got beat the way we did is like a big surprise to everyone. Now, I will say I am really surprised. Those interior D linemen, like they said, like the guys that came over with St. Juice and all that. But, like, on a baseline level, like this was a playoff team, and we have to understand that this is a new identity that needs to be established. There's just a lot of newness across the board, so I'm not too worried. Like the whole getting on the ownership and fire AP, fire DQ, it's ridiculous. Like
I hope that more fans can understand that. Hey, Doug, got to run because we're up against the break. I appreciate the call. I just want to respond to one comment in the YouTube section or the comment section real quick. Brian T. Beal says, playing with an aggressive approach doesn't need cohesion. Yeah, it does. Because when two guys don't communicate and they jump the same route and they leave Jalen McMillan wide open up the sideline, your aggression didn't pay off because you lacked cohesion. So, yeah, it does. And it also, because if you're confident in the cohesion, you know what the guy next to you is going to do, you can full send to the thing that you want to do. Now, again, their play style yesterday, the aggressive physical nature they wanted to do, there is a lot of examples of just that guy needs to go harder right here. They need to be more aggressive to the ball. They need to do a lot of that stuff. But that stuff also comes with the comfort of knowing exactly what you're doing and playing confidently. And it's very clear this unit does not have that yet. And sometimes even playing with that, again, the aggression but not the cohesion means Deron Payne jumps inside and leaves the B gap wide open for a 15-yard rush. Something else that happened yesterday, aggression, lack of cohesion. If you're going to jump inside, you better do it knowing that someone's got your back in the B gap. All right, when we get back, Michael Phillips joins us for his Monday visit on Not My Beat on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. 5:30, we go around the NFL, how we do on our picks week one, plus a little analysis from every game. I got to watch almost all of them because the Commanders played at 4 o'clock yesterday, which means the red zone was fired up on the old TV. But, of course, at 5 o'clock on a Monday, it is time for our Mondays with Michael in Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Michael Phillips, of course, of our sister station, 910 The Fan, down in Richmond. He joins us now on the hotline. And, Michael, appreciate you. How are you doing before we get into the game? How are you personally doing on this Monday?
I feel great because I didn't learn anything yesterday. We'll get into that, but I just feel like every thought we had preseason was largely confirmed, and it turned out a little worse than we thought it would. But I don't know how you could genuinely be surprised by anything that happened.
I actually very much agree with that. I am very much in the it was worse than I expected by a little bit.
Yep.
But it was not catastrophic in any kind of way. And it was like the things that went really poorly are the things that I expected to go really poorly. So I guess the question is, Mike, what do we make of that? What do we do with that information? Do we just sit here and stew?
Look, the Jaden Daniels touchdown at the start of the second half made it a 9-point game. If you count 2 field goals, it's a 3-point game when he scores that touchdown, which is a very different game than the one we're talking about where they never had a chance and they were blown out. And, you know, whether or not you want to count 50-yarders as sure things or not, if they had hit those 2 field goals, we're talking about a game that they're fundamentally competitive into the finish. I think we have a different conversation this morning. So that's the importance of special teams in the NFL. Welcome, Austin Seibert. Your work is cut out for you. But in terms of the defense, it was absolutely worse than we thought it was going to be. It was really, really bad, and it raises a lot of questions about where you go from here and what you do from here. And Craig, I am not here to answer those questions, but just to pose them out loud and indignantly. What do you do with that?
Well, I mean, in some ways, Michael, like, I don't want to say good because it's not like, oh, yeah, yesterday was awesome. But it's like, okay, there's a plan. We all, I think a lot of us, I should say, it's certainly I don't want to speak for anyone else, understand the plan. The plan is so far playing out with the flaws that's intended. I guess in that way, it's like, okay, at least there's not extra stuff that's bad. At least some of the stuff that we hoped was good, and hopefully with a little bit more some more reps and cohesion that can develop is better. Like, and so in that way, I guess all of that information that we've talked about so far is good? ?
Yeah, you can only bring in new players, but so fast. Now, you can bring in new players as quickly as you want. You can only bring in talented players, but so fast. It's a salary cap league, and it's a draft league, and they are allotted a certain number of draft picks. You could turn it into more draft picks, but largely speaking, you're capped in the amount of talent you can bring in a given offseason, and the amount of talent they needed was more than the amount of talent they were able to bring in. I think we all saw last year just the woeful inadequacy of this roster and how badly Ron Rivera's drafts had turned out. And so this year, certainly they're putting in the work. They're bringing in guys, but they're not doing it quickly enough to make a difference. They're not doing it quickly enough that this is going to be right. Yet some people saying this is the Houston Texans this year, right? They had more to work with roster-wise than these guys have to work with. Now, you mentioned the plan. Nobody wants to hear about the plan between week 1 and week 2, Craig. We got 16 more of these to watch. But you're absolutely correct that I'm not down on Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, or the long-term plan at all. If we want to go Cliff Kingsbury, if you want to hit that button, I do have some gripes, but I think they're largely unrelated to the long-term plan.
So I do want to hit on both coordinators, actually, because I've had the chance to watch it all back on film, so my perspective is a little more adjusted compared to, I think, where a lot of people are, where even if they maybe will watch the film tonight because they're sickos, they have, jobs, and their job isn't this one where they get to sit and watch the film all day and then all of a sudden, quote unquote, start work at 4 o'clock. Even yourself, Michael, who does the same thing I do. You talk into microphones for a living, because Michael Phillips from 910 Fan, who hosts the wonderful radio show MP on the Mic, 10 a.m. to noon every day. His show starts at 10, so you didn't get a chance to watch all the film before your show started this morning. But what are your gripes with Cliff Kingsbury? And then I can tell you what I think of your gripes. I will gripe about your gripes, or I will agree with your gripes based off what I've seen. Gripe away.
That's a good radio format. I like that. I'm going to steal that for future programming in Richmond.
Excellent.
It's you can't run Jaden Daniels 16 times. And watching it back, and I'd love to hear your perspective, I do think there were a lot of options or keepers. The one I'm thinking of is the one where he scored the touchdown and they called it back on replay. You are down 3 touchdowns late in the game that you are not going to win. And if you decide to make it a game, Tampa is going to be like, hey, they're making it a game, let's score another touchdown. And so it's not a game again. So there's no scenario there where you're going to win that game, I don't think, late. And you've got your quarterback, you're stat padding him by throwing him into the defense, subjecting him to another hit on the goal line, completely unnecessarily, in my opinion. Now, if that's an option, I still am a no on that. I think Cliff Kingsbury needs to be the adult in the room. We're giving the ball to Brian Robinson. He's going to score a touchdown. I don't care that you're the first rookie ever to score 2 touchdowns and rush for 80 yards in his debut. That's not a thing we're doing. 16 rushes, Craig, is 3 more than RG3 ever had in his career. It's the same number Lamar Jackson had last Thursday in that Chiefs-Ravens opener when we were all saying the next day, or at least I was saying the next day, the dude's not going to make it to the end of the season at this pace.
So I think that a couple of things, some micro, some macro. On the super micro, the carry late in the game, I agree with you. Just freaking hand the ball off. Like, you just don't need to get him a hit there. I don't care if you pull Jeremy McNichols in. Somebody else besides your starting quarterback who everything relies upon can take that hit in that situation. I am with you. I do think it was an option. I do think it was technically the correct decision to keep it. And maybe they call that because they think, hey, if it's going to be open, he'll walk in and he won't take a hit. Well, sometimes that's not how it goes, and a linebacker or safety scrapes over the top. And lucky enough on the execution part, he can power through that guy, but it's still a hit. On the macro, like the most macro, before I get to kind of the middle ground of this game overall, I do think we talk about running quarterbacks taking hits as runners in a very silly way. The biggest hit that Jaden Daniels took yesterday was in the pocket. And that is pretty typical for the biggest quarterbacks hits that any quarterback takes, is they take them in the pocket because at that point they are thinking about, I am trying to be a passer. When you're a runner, you see the hits coming and you protect your body, and it's a very different kind of impact. Again, it's still impact. There still is kind of a wearing over time. We've seen it with guys like Cam Newton that were used as human battering rams that eventually like get really jacked up Cam's shoulder. But I do think on that front, like we have to be okay with Jaden Daniels being a runner on some level, because otherwise he's not nearly as effective as a player, which brings us to the what's that level. I counted 7 or 8 scrambles, Michael. So more than half of those are not by design. And while I think a lot of them were actually good decisions to scramble, I do think there's a lot of those where if Jaden just does the either correctly reads the defense within the context of the play, or as it starts to break down, hits an easy check down, he can avoid some of those hits just by quarterbacking better. And that's the nature of a guy playing his first game against a Todd Bowles defense in the NFL.
Hey, he's not the only rookie quarterback who had issues yesterday. Bo Nix averaged like 4 inches per throw. It was, Caleb Williams, was lucky that the other quarterback was like, I absolutely insist that your team win this football game. We didn't have the benefit of that in D.C. The other quarterback decided to go ahead and win the football game, and you don't get to pick your opponents. That's how football works. That's rookie quarterbacking. There's a lot of them this year. There's a lot of hype, so everybody's going to be tracking them all year long. Certainly the offensive line, I felt like, did not help the situation overall. I think Jaden Daniels got a lot thrown at him by Todd Bowles, and you could probably speak to that more having watched the tape. But, man, that's a good defense that did some good things. And when we talk about matchups, right, next week is a better matchup, both for the corners on defense going against Daniel Jones instead of these Tampa receivers, and a better matchup for the offensive line going against a Giants defensive line that I don't think is as good or as innovative as that Giants group. I think a lot of things added up into maybe making it look like more of a disaster than it was.
No, I agree. I mean, the Giants defensive line is stupid talented. I don't think that they're nearly as tricky to decide. Like, Jaden Daniels will feel much more like he's in the preseason against vanilla defenses. All due respect to Shane Bowen, that's just in comparison to Todd Bowles. Like, there are times before the snap that I just pause the tape and I go, "What the bleep is this?" Because like that's facing Todd Bowles. Is you're like, "What's that dude doing there? Hey, you don't belong there. What are you doing?" And then all of a sudden you look at him, he drops out, and then you realize that probably means someone's going to come from my ouch, and then you're getting hit. That is the nature of facing Bowles. But defensively for Washington, Michael Phillips with us here on a Michael Monday on the Team 980. Of course, this is what we do every Monday after the Commanders play for Not My Beat. So, Michael, on the other side of it, though, I think that's the side of the ball where fans go, "Oh my God, we're still doing this?" Far more than on the offense. What did you make of some of the key issues they had defensively?
Yeah, and I think that the late game runs, it looked like Tampa was kind of communicating its game plan. Like, we're going to run the ball up the middle, run the clock. When those are going for 11, 12, 14 yards, this was a demoralized, gashed defense. It's hot down there too. Don't undersell that. That humidity is the real deal. Temperature's the real deal. Those guys are worn out. Johnny Newton wasn't there, so I don't think Payne and Allen have any long-term.
Pop quiz, Michael, in the middle of your answer. I'm interrupting you. Who is number 64?
Who is number 64?
I believe his name is Sheldon Day. I didn't know he was on the team until I watched the film back today, and they had who was on the field on the side of the screen.
That's Sheldon Day.
He must have gotten activated on Saturday from a practice squad spot that I didn't know he had. That's who replaced Johnny Newton.
That's wow. That's not great news for Fedarian Mathis, by the way.
Well, no, he was out there with Fedarian, but they didn't. Okay. After they traded Ridgeway, like they only had 4 inside, Newton being the 4th, and so he's out. And thus they brought up someone from the practice squad, and it was not one of the guys they had in camp. It was Sheldon Day, who they signed at some point in the previous week.
How about that? You learn something every day. It's been an educational program today. Sheldon Day. All right. Yeah. I don't think there's long-term issues. There were some individual plays you can cite. I want to throw a little bit of, maybe a little pump the brakes, throw a little cold water on. Jamin Davis got 14 snaps, and I see people saying, man, he needed more snaps. And I think they're remembering the one great play he had, which was a really cool play, blew up the run. I think he's a situational guy. I think he's a guy you put in there when you know what the down and distance is, when you're not at risk of him getting caught out in coverage. I think that's probably about the right number for him. But it's just so hard for me to talk about macro, the defense, when you got 2 corners that got torched all day long. And I mean, that was the story of the game. If they give you even a little bit of something, I think this is, add in the field goals, add in maybe 1 or 2 stops, this is potentially a different story we're telling. But for Jamin Davis, man, 2 penalties in 1 play, it's actually hard to do, Craig. It's kind of impressive.
You mean Emmanuel Forbes on the deep one?
I'm sorry. I was talking about Davis. Yes, Emmanuel Forbes, the face.
You don't need to take. You don't need to take your cold water on Jamin Davis to go straight to besmirching falsely, Michael.
Yeah,
you used to have integrity. What happened to
you? Exactly.
I do agree with you, though. The Forbes stuff is bad, and I think what's worse for him is I had written down in my notes not playing hard enough before that, which obviously I didn't write that after because he didn't play at all after. So I it's tough because I do think the pass rush has a lot to do with this, where everything was so easy for Baker. He took a couple of hits, but not many. And certainly, I guess I don't want to say easy because there's times where he scrambled, obviously, and like that was difficult, but it ultimately he made plays. And there's also times where like the first third down of the game, they bring a zone blitz and it doesn't get home, and all of a sudden Dorrance Armstrong is stuck in space on Chris Godwin. That's not a Dorrance Armstrong issue, nor is that a corner's issue. That's a, hey, we brought a blitz and it didn't get home issue. And so what I'm really curious to talk to Logan about tomorrow when we take command and go deeper into it with his level of expertise and to kind of watch as the season goes on, Michael, is like, is it possible to generate pressure, or is this the level of test that St. Juice and whoever is playing opposite him is going to face all year long? In which case, yikes, bro, I don't want to be either of those men.
Yeah, right. That's the thing where you win, you lose. It's week one. You don't want to overreact either way. It just feels like some of these are problems that are not fixable in the sense of the bounds of this football season and the 16 games they're about to play. And that's what's really, I think, discouraging to fans this morning. Look, we'll make the investment. We'll watch the games, and we'll certainly watch Jaden Daniels learn and grow and develop. That's absolutely the number one storyline this season and the number one most important thing. But defensively, it just, and they could have a good performance against the Giants because, again, it's Daniel Jones. The receiver caliber is less. The Daniel Jones caliber is less. But there's the sense that this is maybe not something that's going to get fixed.
No, that is true. Okay, I'm going to do something to you that your colleague Adam Epstein did to me because I was on his show today, and Adam was just getting saltier and saltier, and it wasn't because he was broadcasting live from a pub and possibly eating French fries. It was because his attitude was getting just saltier and saltier, Michael, by his own admission. But he's like, give me something positive to chew on here at the end of our chat. So, Michael, if I'm forcing you to give something positive from yesterday, shout out someone, give me a positive here that you can take into Giants Week and be like, hey, if some more folks can join that guy, hopefully we can beat up on Big Blue because they stink. What's your positivity coming out of week one?
Ready for the positives and negatives. Terry McLaurin wasn't involved at all, and he will be. And this is an offense that did actually move the ball all right in large chunks of the game. 2 drives that had big chunks of field, and then you missed the field goal at the end. But the drives are good. A lot of scoring play drives. The NFL average last year was 22 points per game, and they were on that, and they'll continue to be on that. And you haven't seen what Terry McLaurin's fully capable of. And it looks like Luke McCaffrey's going to be a regular. And I'm excited to see what that turns into over the course of the season. I think for the offense, there's no reason to be unnecessarily down. I think there's a lot of bright sides to look at. I thought Bobby Wagner played with intensity and effort, all those things you know Bobby Wagner for. But it was still fun to see that in a Commander's uniform, right? Like, it's still cool to see him do that and like be on the home team, and in the burgundy and gold. And like that was cool to see a guy like that playing at that level, even in the midst of a losing effort. And Tressway's on this team, Craig. Tressway.
Tressway, number 10, still number 1 in our hearts. That's
always. That's
for sure. I will say with Terry, I feel like there was a plan to get him some shots, and Tampa was like, no freaking way. And yet still, the one to start the second half, he's wide open. There is another dagger play where he's running up the seam, and Michael, he is screaming wide open. And Jaden is looking, what looks to me on the all-22 end zone angle, I'm watching that helmet stripe going, buddy, you're looking right at him. Throw it. He could have easily had 4, like just those 2 are completed. It's 4 catches for $150 and 2 touchdowns, and no one's talking about Terry today other than, man, that guy's awesome. Thank God he's on our team. I do think they need to force feed him the ball early, but I agree with you is like there's enough on tape where I'm like, I feel like they know how important Terry is. They might have to crank up and realize like how intentional they're going to have to be about getting him the ball. But there were some stuff dialed up for him, and Jaden's willing to throw it most of the time, except for that one where he missed him. And so I'm kind of, as bad as and unproductive as Terry was in the stats yesterday, I'm kind of excited about Terry starting next week.
I agree. I think there's a lot to look forward to. I think this is a big game, though. It's a sneaky, big early game because Daniel Jones and the Giants offense, that's about as easy of a test as you're going to get for a defense. So I feel like this is, if that was, maybe what the defense is going to look like against some of the better teams in the league and better offenses, we need to set the floor this week as well. And hopefully the floor gets set higher than maybe I'm worried it's going to be set right now.
Well, I will say, don't forget, because I don't want to jinx it, or not mention it and thus jinx it. Daniel Jones turns into some, Tom Brady-like figure against the Commanders historically. So I don't know if they got to wear the black uniforms on the road or something to confuse him, but we can't have that version of Daniel Jones. Also, speaking of personal vendettas, it just popped into my mind. I'm pretty sure Terry McLaurin hates Deonte Banks. That's a thing that's somewhere in my head from last year is like Deonte Banks was talking a lot, and Terry was eventually like, bleep you, dude, my quarterbacks are terrible. And he still like got a couple of big catches on him and was like, if I ever get a quarterback, I'm going to murder you. And now he's got a quarterback, so that could be fun. Just a little something to put in the back of your mind brain. And we can talk about it next Monday. That's Michael Phillips, everybody. If you want more from him, 10 a.m. to noon on 910 The Fan in Richmond, which you can listen to on the free Odyssey app. Michael, thank you for your time as always, and have a great rest of the week of shows. And I'll talk to you next week.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, this is Michael Phillips, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. I do want to, real quick, Brian T. Beal on the YouTube chat, Anthony, is bringing up stuff that I want to respond to. So I'm gonna quickly, like a 30-second response to old Brian T. Beal. Keeping Terry on the left side is very vanilla, unimaginative. Brian, look at the camera here as opposed to the chat over here. Brian, left is a direction, not an alignment. What do I mean by that? Terry in this game lined up wide left. He lined up on the outside of a stack to the left. He was the most outer guy in a bunch to the left. He also lined up tight to the line of scrimmage. He might have been the most outside guy there because they just kind of almost lined him up in a tight end type of split, and there was no one outside of him. Technically, he is wide left there, but he's not wide. It's just you get a credit as being wide because there's no one outside of you. He also did line up in the slot at least 6 times per PFF on 30-something pass routes, which is about 20% of the time they passed the ball, he was in the slot, including a slot fade that Jaden threw him. He probably shouldn't have. He probably should have been a touch more patient, and he had Zach Ertz over the middle. But I also didn't mind the idea of giving Terry that shot out of the slot. So, again, quit always just regurgitating the thing that you see on Twitter, including, by the way, if I tweet it. Like, use eyeballs. Watch a little bit more. Did you come out of that game yesterday being like, oh, man, Terry's on the left, unimaginative? No, you were like, wow, look at all the different formations they use. Look at all the places they put all these different players. Look at Terry sometimes lined up next to Olamide Zaccheaus, and sometimes next to Austin Eckler, sometimes next to Zach Ertz, and go, wow, that's a lot of different stuff. They were multiple. Yes, Terry's going to line up to the left a lot, but it doesn't mean that they're not being or that they're being unimaginative or vanilla. That offense is not vanilla. I refuse to give in on that one. Okay, that's my 30-second. That was probably closer to 60 rant on the Terry on the left side thing. Anything else you'd like to add, Anthony?
It was actually 113, but that's it.
Okay, thanks for counting. When we get back around the NFL, we go. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 6 o'clock, our Pick 6 at 6. We take a look at the 6 players we thought Friday would be the most interesting to watch in the Commanders-Bucs game, and we get to see how they did. Hey, how'd that guy play? Well, beauty of the way NFL Pro works now, Anthony, is that I've got a pretty good sense of a lot of this stuff because I've watched every single snap of that silly game on the coach's tape. What a way to spend your Monday.
I don't think it was a terrible way to spend your Monday,
It was interesting.
Yeah.
I'll say that much. I don't know if it was the most enjoyable.
I think that's the best word to use.
But it was interesting. You know what was enjoyable, though? Yesterday, I just got to sit back in the 1 o'clock window, fire up Red Zone. I also took the dive. I got Sunday Ticket. And so I had Red Zone on the main TV. I had my iPad up, and I was flipping around between some non-NFL stuff, U.S. Open, Liberty Aces, but then also I was like, I want to watch Caleb Williams, and I don't want to miss a snap. So I put Titans-Bears on my iPad for most of the 1 o'clock window. And it was really enjoyable. And that means, as we hit around the NFL, I have thoughts from basically every game because I watched most of them. And also, we have picks results. Week 1, how'd we do? Plus, we need to pick Jets 49ers. Are we going to pick Jets 49ers now so we don't forget? Or did we already?
No, we haven't picked it.
Let's do it now so we don't forget.
Okay.
Jets 49ers, who you got tonight?
I'm going with the Jets.
I'm going with the 49ers. I have zero trust in the Jets.
I already knew where you were going to go. I just didn't want to, have the same team.
Okay.
No, I think also Aaron Rodgers, I've been seeing a lot of reports. He looks really good. I think the defense is going to go out there. Why'd you do that?
Because he looks really good. It's training camp. You realize how bad you have to be to not look good in training camp? Did we learn nothing yesterday? Are we not about to go around the entire league and talk about all these players that looked awesome in training camp that struggled yesterday?
You're right, Craig. You're right. But for some reason, I feel as though Aaron freaking Rodgers is going to answer the call tonight. Let's go, A-Rod.
He might. And their defense is great, and Garrett Wilson is great, and Breece Hall is great.
Breece Hall, baby.
I think the Jets are a legitimately solid football team. I think the 49ers are an excellent football team.
Yes.
And I think they're a little bit pissed that everyone's just kind of overlooking them because of all the drama they had this offseason. If Kyle can get them focused / they can focus themselves, guys like Fred Warner and all the leaders on that team can be, which, by the way, includes Trent, can be like, hey, all that stuff didn't matter. Let's go out and remind the world who we are. I think they'll be just fine. I'll take San Francisco tonight. All right, we talked about Ravens-Chiefs, obviously, last week. I have to be honest, I didn't watch a ton of Packers-Eagles on Friday night. I was exhausted, and that game was late. But Eagles win 34-29. I think that's actually a 1-0 for you on the picks front, Anthony.
So you were up 1-0 because of the Chiefs-Ravens?
Right, and then we're tied 1-1 going into the weekend because you had the Eagles and I had the Packers.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, the big story of this one is that Jordan Love got hurt at the very end of it. Torn MCL, I believe, was the diagnosis. He's out at least 4 weeks. He's been put on IR, and we'll see what I got that right? I didn't make that up?
What?
Jordan Love out 4 weeks, MCL. I'm remembering that correctly from the weekend.
I don't know if the timeline is all the way out, but
at least, if he's on IR, he's out at least 5 weeks. Or sorry, at least 4 weeks.
Yeah, I know earlier today, LaFleur was asked if he can't play, will Malik Willis
I guess
play?
no, he hasn't been put on IR yet.
Yeah, he hasn't. Yeah, they haven't done that yet. They did that for Puka Nacua, though. He's on IR.
Yes. So I'm just getting all the mush of my football brain confused. Yes. Malik Willis will start if Jordan Love is out. So I guess that's good news that he's avoided. Oh, that's what the news was. He avoided ACL. Yeah. So that's good. There was someone else who avoided ACL and had an MCL. I thought it was Love. It wasn't. But he's avoided ACL. He is week to week, and Malik Willis will start this weekend if Jordan Love cannot play. Other than that, obviously, Saquon Barkley, you see the impact. He has 24 carries, 109 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a receiving touchdown. It's like, oh, yeah, you put him with good offensive line and good other players, and he's going to be awesome.
It's not even fair, man. that offense that they have. And I feel like they're one of those teams that sort of kind of being underlooked. But I think if their offense can carry them, I still have questions about their defense. I think if the offense can carry them, though, I think they'll be solid. But don't go away from the run, and that's what teams usually do.
Yeah, no, they'll be dedicated to it. Saquon, obviously, Jalen also, has got to be a part of it. He has 13 carries for 33 yards, but just the threat of him can make the numbers better for Saquon and get him in space. And yikes, man. I love the way Philly also, they get their guys the ball. And this has always been my thing with multiple iterations of the Washington offenses is how do you get Terry 10 targets a game? A.J. Brown has 10. He only catches 5, but those 5 go for 119, almost 24 a catch, a touchdown, including a 67-yarder. Devontae Smith has 8 targets, 7 catches, 84 yards. Dallas Goedert's got 5. So you got to find ways to get your playmakers the ball, and they did a really good job. Meanwhile, if you're trying to play the Packers, who's going to be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy game, Jaden Reed seems like he's the leader in the clubhouse. 4 catches, 138, including a 70-yard touchdown. Romeo Doubs also 4 catches. He had 50 yards. He was actually the leader in targets with 7. Christian Watson, 5. So they're moving it around a little bit. Tucker Kraft's got 3. Luke Musgrave's got 2. Dontavian Wicks, no catches, but 3 targets. So they're spreading the ball around, and I'm curious to see week to week how much that fluctuates, Anthony, both for real and fantasy purposes.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, though, especially if Jordan Love's out, though. I feel like we won't really get a true assessment of the wide receiver core until he gets back. And there's no shade to Malik Willis. I just think.
No, shade to Malik Willis. He's not very good at NFL quarterback.
Okay.
But, let's also see, right?
Yeah.
Matt LaFleur's a kind of a quarterback whisperer. He's awesome. And I'm curious to see what the game plan looks like, how fast they can get him up to speed on some extremely watered-down version of what they want to do, and they'll probably run him 15 times, by design.
Smart, though.
Absolutely. He's ridiculously athletic. He is the kind of athlete that can be a weapon in the run game. So how do you utilize that and then leverage whatever you can get out of him as a passer? The Kirk Cousins debut in Atlanta, that did not go well. Looked incredibly rusty. Steelers 18-10 the win, and just Kirk had some old, young Kirk, what are you doing, man, type of plays in there. I was kind of surprised at that, Anthony, because, again, this dude was playing the best ball of his career when he got hurt last year. I guess it's probably totally fair to anticipate some level of rust, but I'm sure the Falcons are very much hoping that he gets that turned around. Otherwise, that Michael Penix thing is going to get real awkward real fast.
Yeah, at times he sort of kind of looked like a statue, wasn't as mobile, but TJ Watt is on that Steelers defensive line.
That is also a very good point. That is astute analysis. Also, TJ Watt.
Craig, when I tell you this guy was destroyed, it didn't matter if they chipped him. It didn't matter if they had a tight end there. It didn't matter what they did. TJ Watt was making his presence felt. And guess what? When you had 3 guys on TJ, Alex Highsmith was the other guy on the other side. Oh, and if you want to single coverage him, all right, we also have Casey Hayward. So I just think the front 4 of the Steelers, they didn't have to send that many blitzes just because, TJ and the rest of the crew was getting home. So I can't blame.
TJ Watt still might be the best player in football, the best defensive player in football. It is disgusting when he gets going.
Oh my god!
He is unblockable. I've watched him ruin more games. I mean, the Steelers, obviously, we talk about them having a plus 500 record for every year Tomlin's been there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to know what the record is when Watt is there. Because, in some of the playoff losses, he's been out, including last year. They are a totally different team when he's there. And
they got Minka back. Yeah, I think he had an interception yesterday.
I believe
it was very close. Yeah, I thought it was an interception. And then defense looked good.
It did. The Falcons defense, your favorite unit in the NFL, looked all right. Justin Simmons and all those guys, they only gave up 18 points.
They did good.
You should win a game in which you give up 18 points.
Yeah.
They did not. The Cardinals are like, man, we should win a game if we score 28. Not against the Bills, not against overrated, quote-unquote, Josh Allen, according to Anthony. Allen, 232, 2 touchdowns, also effective on the ground. 34-28, Bills were down in this game early. They come back and get the win.
It was looking good for the Cardinals early on, and the Cardinals were just being the Cardinals at the end of the day. Josh Allen, I'm not going to lie, he did it all yesterday. He ran, he threw. He was
good. Josh Allen.
Yeah,
that's why he's not underrated.
He looked good. I still feel he's not in my top 5. He's not in mine.
I'll take him.
All right.
Bears, Titans. What a ugly start for the Bears. They were down 17-0 in this game. Their rookie quarterback, Caleb Williams, threw for under 100 yards in his debut. Looked real lost. Balls hitting the turf. Like, it was nasty. And they won 24-17. Their defense and special team come up huge. They have a blocked punt return for a touchdown, and that return was actually made by Mr. Simone Biles himself, Jonathan Owens. I was a little disappointed in my good friend Adam Amin, who was calling this game. He very clearly should have said Owens sticks the landing. Punt,
Ooh,
blocked,
that was
Owens,
tough.
scoop, scores, sticks the landing. It's right there, Adam.
Next time.
Next time.
Next time.
Next time. But alas, they also got a pick six. Jalen Johnson seals it with an interception. The pick six, by the way, just one of the dumbest throws that anyone has ever made in the NFL. Long list of dumbest throws in NFL history, but add this one to the reel. Will Levis trying to scoop the ball out of bounds, just right to the Bears DB. 24-17. Chicago the win. And by the way, they covered, which is one in the competition Wednesday books for me. This one was also in the competition books Wednesday for me on the positive side, although I didn't know that they were going to win straight up. Patriots 16, Bengals 10. Are we officially hitting the panic button if we're in Cincinnati?
You might just have to, man.
Yeah. You lost to the Patriots.
That's a bad loss.
Real bad.
loss.
Really bad. Really, really, really bad. Their offense pretty inept on the day. Burrow throws for just 164 yards. Doesn't get the ball downfield at all. Jamar Chase plays 6 catches on 6 targets for 62. So, that's an okay day for Jamar Chase. Good job kind of containing him. But when he's not out there for the full complement of snaps and you're without T. Higgins, now you're without Tyler Boyd, they've got to find who the next guys are. And they have not done that yet. Defensively, obviously have some questions as well. But Burrow, and in the rushing game, by the way, only 3 carries, 11 yards for Chase Brown. Zach Moss, 9 for 44. They're trying to replace Joe Mixon. Doesn't look like they have that replacement. And that's going to make the kind of offense they run a lot harder. You have to have some, you don't have to have a great running game, but you have to have some level of fear. And the Patriots, by the way, are a good defense. And that play-action heavy game that they like to run off that McVay tree, not so far, not so good. Texans 29, Colts 27. Man, I thought Indy might pull this out. It's one of the absolute sickest throws you will ever see on the first touchdown from Anthony Richardson.
Man.
Traveled, I think it was 65.3 yards in the air. That is the 3rd longest throw on a touchdown in the next-gen stats era. Unfortunately, that throw certainly did not come up short. The Colts comeback attempt does. Stroud, 2 touchdowns. Mixon, speaking of, 30 carries, 159 and a touchdown. Texans get out to the early lead in the AFC South.
Man, when I tell you Joe Mixon literally won them that game, just because of just how physical he was. He bouncing off tacklers. And so the fact that he was able to go out there and put up 160 on the ground, CJ really didn't even have to do too much. And that's scary because we know he can, go out there and carve up a defense. And he just made the timely throws. That third down to Nico Collins, that's a huge throw, huge
ridiculous
catch.
Throw.
And you got to know, he's going to Nico Collins on third down every single time they need a play. So shouts out to the Texans. I'll see them October 27th. I have that day circled. I'll be visiting Houston for Colts, Texans. They got to get it back.
The rematch. By the way, how are we doing on picks? I was on the Bears. So were you?
Yes, you're 3-4. I'm 2-5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rough start. Jags and Dolphins. This was almost a bad start for Miami. Of course, the big story in this game is the absolutely insane scene beforehand where Tyreek Hill is cited for some kind of traffic violation and winds up on the ground in handcuffs. We'll talk about that story more tomorrow and as the week goes, as more comes out on it, because I have some thoughts. But man, for him to then go out and score, Tua hitting some of the big throws down the field, gutsy performance. Jalen Ramsey winds up playing in this game for Miami. They didn't think he was going to, but on a limited snap count, in fact, he had a big penalty, if I'm remembering correctly, that gave Jags a big opportunity. But at the end of the day, like, they gut it out, and the Jags get shut out in the second half. And that's just not good enough from Trevor Lawrence and company. And Miami gets off to not maybe the 1-0 start stylistically they imagine, but a win's a win, and they'll take it.
Yeah, the Jags have this one in the bag, Craig. Travis Etienne, he's on the doorstep of the goal line and gets the ball punched out. The Dolphins recover. They go down, kick the field goal. That's a heartbreaking loss right there. Could you drive the length of the field only for that to happen? That's tough. But, that's why they say games are, 60 minutes. You got to play until the last whistle.
And field's 100 yards long. Every single inch matters.
Yep, every
There's
one.
a couple of plays like that where guys have balls knocked out right at the goal line. And red zone interceptions, the whole deal. Saints 47-10 over Carolina. This could be a very long year for the Panthers. If you thought, it was deja vu all over again for the Commanders, my God, being a Panthers fan yesterday must have stunk. Are the Saints better than we thought? Maybe. We'll find out, the rest of the season. Is Carolina this bad? I don't know. I think if you're Carolina, you're hoping that your season maybe mimics like the Cardinals last year, where you get better as it goes, but you can be more competitive as it goes. But man, yikes.
They got
Bad. Is Bryce Young broken? Like, does he just suck?
I don't know. I think it's a combination of things. The talent around him, the offensive line,
Bro, he was
he's small. Like,
it's all of it. He was 13 of 30 yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he looked like one of these rookie quarterbacks.
Oh. I just hope that I liked him a lot coming out. I think he's like a smart kid and seems to be a great human being. You root for people like that, but dang, man, I hope that they didn't ruin him already.
Yeah.
Maybe he was always going to be bad at the NFL, but Vikings 28, Giants 6. Mark this one down for Hoffman. The Giants real bad. We'll see if they can bounce back next week. They were real bad in week 1 last year as well, and we're able to bounce back a little bit as the season went and be much more competitive. But Vikings did exactly what I thought they would. Hey, where's Justin Jefferson? That's the Sam Darnold plan. Find Justin Jefferson. 4 catches, 59 yards, touchdown. A bunch of those were in big spots. Meanwhile, ran the ball effectively. 14 carries, 94 yards for Aaron Jones in his Minnesota debut. Meanwhile, Daniel Jones, brutal day, 22 of 42, $186, no touchdowns, 2 picks, a 17.4 QBR. They didn't do much on the ground either. Jones just 15 yards rushing, Singletary 37. Malik Neighbors, a nice enough debut. They got him 7 targets, caught 5 for 66. But, man, this Giants team does not look like it's very good. Jones looks like he's very bad, and Justin Jefferson is awesome.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought the Giants were going to be able to do this. I think this just goes back to, show how bad I am about, when it comes to picking games. But, next week I'll do better because more than likely Daniel Jones is going to have a very good outing against the Commanders. But, Craig, I saw this fascinating stat. Since Daniel Jones signed his $160 million deal, he's thrown more pick sixes than he has touchdowns. He has thrown 3 pick sixes and only 2 touchdowns.
That is not good. That's my analysis, Anthony. That's
not
bad.
Good.
Really, really bad. Raiders go down in L.A. 22-10. Chargers get their first win of the Jim Harbaugh era, and boy, was it a Harbaugh kind of game. J.K. Dobbins, 10 carries, 135. Edwards, 11 carries for 26. They ran the ball 27 times as a team. They only threw it 26. Herbert, a tidy, 17 of 26, 144 yards, 1 touchdown. Average completion of 5.5 yards. Just kept it nice and easy. Lad McConkey doing work. 5 catches, 39 yards for the rookie out of Georgia. Khalil Mack, showing that he's still got some juice left. And we're what I tell you on Friday. 1 Raiders loss, 1 day closer to, and 1 game closer to Devontae Adams saying, "Get me the hell out of here."
Yeah, I didn't expect the offense to look that inept. I expect the bigger things from Gardner Minshew. Just Just being honest. He looked good last year with the Colts in spots, and I thought he was going to be able to bounce back. But shout out to the Chargers. I don't know if Justin Herbert is going to be content with, throwing the ball 5-10 yards down the field because we know he has a big arm. If
it wins,
results and wins, I guess so.
He's pretty. It seems like he's a pretty low key guy, and is kind of, like the criticism is he's always been pretty robotic. So if it's like, hey, boop boop boop, program robot, throw short, unless someone's wide open deep. I mean, they'll find their spots, but I kind of think that the Alex Smith saying that he used to like a lot, you can't go broke making a profit. Yeah. I think Jim Harbaugh is a big fan of that. Seahawks 26, Broncos 20. Geno touchdown, a pick, 171. Kenneth Walker, the big producer for Seattle, 20 carries, 103 and a touch on the ground. Bo Nix, I have to look it up real quick, and I don't feel like it, but his average depth of target was like almost negative. They just dink and dunk and dink and dunk. It didn't really get anywhere. He does get a rushing touchdown, but kind of a rough debut. But they still put up 20 points, but not enough against the talented Seahawks team that starts 1-0 at home.
Yeah, Geno looked good. He also had a huge scramble. And I think Bo Nix is going to be good. I just think he needs a little time. That's all.
He definitely needs time. Cowboys 33-17 over the Browns. Gavante Turpin, a 60-yard punt return. Dak Prescott, 19 of 32. One touchdown, no picks, and 200, what was it, 60? 240?
240, 231 guaranteed.
Yeah, $1 million. Biggest contract in NFL history. Congrats to him. I mean, I just don't understand if you're, like, it just goes to prove. I mean, congrats to the Cowboys. You played really well. Looks like you're going to be good. You see some discipline on defense, and you're like, okay, this, I think this is good. Deshaun Watson still looks awful. And that's the worst contract in football. But for Dak and the Cowboys, it's like, why did you just make him the highest paid player in football in April or last April? And then it would have cost you a lot less, and the timeline would have been better. Now you're paying him till he's 34 years old? Like, you could have done this 2 years ago probably and gotten him till he was 32 and then made a decision then on what you wanted to do. It's just the Cowboys wait until we make him the highest paid player anyway and give him the contract, which, by the way, is more expensive because 3 other guys have signed and raised the market. It's just the dumbest contract strategy in sports, and they do it every single time, Anthony.
Well, for a Commanders fan, I think that's good. Because,
and we approve that message.
We approve it. You keep doing that. We know it's malpractice, but you keep doing that, sir. You keep doing it. You keep messing it up.
We will take it. By the way, can I find this real quick? Is the A dot on here? I was trying to look at the stats per game, advanced metrics, average, your air yards per attempt. There we go. Bo Nix yesterday. Oh, he wasn't last. There's 6.1. Jaden Daniels actually was less, 5.2. Baker Mayfield just 5. In case you're wondering, Gardner Minshew lowest on the day. 4.4. Okay, anyway, enough of the next-gen stats. Last but not least, last night, Rams go down in overtime to the Lions, 26-20. David Montgomery gets into the end zone to cap things off. Big day for Jamison Williams, 5 catches, 121, and a touchdown, Anthony. Lions and Rams. Like, craziest stat, we'll wrap up the Around the League breakdown with this. Every single 2023 playoff team won in week 1, except for the ones that played another 2023 playoff team. There is not a single team that made the playoffs last year that lost to a team that didn't make the playoffs last year, which shows you the power of continuity, because most of those teams have same head coach, same quarterback, same, key players. That is kind of what we see in week 1. The question is going to be, how do these other teams develop and come together and coalesce over the course of the season? But I think what you take out of that, the last game of the Sunday slate is the same as I take out of the first game of the weekend, and frankly the second, Thursday and Friday's games. 2 good football teams playing good ball, and we'll see if they can sustain it over the course of the season. All right, we get back our pick 6 at 6. 6 key players that we identified Friday that would hold the keys to the Commanders playing well. How did they do as the Commanders didn't play particularly well? That's next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Get back to Tell the Truth Monday coming up at 6:30, where you can call us and let us know what you thought the truth about the game was. But right now, before we get to that, we get to this. The key commanders that we identified on Friday that we were most intrigued to watch on Sunday, how'd they do? It's our Monday version of the Pick Six.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level, build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, let's get to it. It is Pick 6 time. And Anthony, you had number 1 on Friday, so let's get it started with, well,
Number 1.
Yes, number 1, Tyler Biadasz. Was that him on?
Yeah, Tyler.
All right, just making sure. I had to go to the list real quick.
Tyler Biadasz.
Yes. So I had Tyler on there primarily because of his veteran experience, being able to diagnose who's coming, and just being able to help the rookie quarterback. And I think for the most part, I think the O-line did a good job, holding up. I feel as though I think they gave up 2 total sacks. And one was more so, I would assume it was a covered sack. Jaden had nowhere to go. But for the most part, I think the O-line did a good job of protecting the young QB.
They did a good job, not a great job,
yeah.
I would say. So you saw my notes, Ant,
Yep.
and you were like, oh, look at you with the scrambles.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the first thing I did. I was like, okay, I'm going to make a separate column or a separate page for the scrambles. So let me take you inside Jaden's scrambles. The first one is on that first drive on 3rd and 21. Wiley loses inside. Jaden doesn't even really look downfield. He gets 4 yards. He gets tackled. Whatever. It's also 3rd and 21. Whatever. Not ideal, by the way, for Wiley to lose quickly, but that's not like a Biadasz identification issue.
Yeah.
4:41 to go in the first quarter. 2nd and 8. They run a bunch of comebacks. Wiley oversets the defensive end. Dubin lined up super wide. Wiley goes out to try to meet him. Dubin pops inside. Jaden picked his matchup, and he doesn't have time because Wiley oversets and he's got pressure. Had his first read been open, that ball's out. It's not. He scrambles. He gets 9 yards on 2nd and 8. Ultimately, not a bad play. 3rd and 4. De'Ami Brown gets held up. He pump fakes to Ertz. He kind of had time, but then Austin Eckler on this one. This is good job, Tyler Biadasz in the O-line. They got everything blocked up. Big thanks to Austin Eckler. He probably should have made a throw here, but he ultimately scrambles for 17 yards. But it was a situation where the first one of the game that results in a scramble pressure where Jaden scrambles, where they have to pick up a blitz. They have to figure out who's coming. Do I have the right number of people? And they do. And instead of just staying put, Jaden takes off. Again, he probably could have had waited a little bit more. He kind of gets locked on a couple guys who don't win and blah, blah, blah. Second quarter, 10-10 to go. 2nd and 8. It's a 3-by-1. So they get Terry isolated. Or not isolated because he's a part of the 3, but they get it towards clear man-to-man and slot fade. Terry's going deep and it's covered. Oh God, I'm gonna sneeze, Anthony. Oh, this is the worst. When you're about to sneeze and then it's not gonna come. And you're hosting a radio show, but there went the sneeze. But what did I do, Anthony, to avoid a fine?
You turned off your mic.
That's right. On that one, there was also a stunt up front, and Coleman completely missed the looper. So that's not on Biadasz. They 2nd and 10 with 8:29 to go in the second quarter. He probably had enough time here, but he gets 12 plus the unnecessary roughness penalty. But there's good pass pro. It was literally in my note, good pass pro. Third quarter, early on, he had Ertz late, had Terry deep, and he just takes off. I don't remember the pass pro on that one. And then later in the fourth quarter, he had time, probably could have let one rip. to Zacchaeus, and he ultimately takes off instead. I do think a lot of the pressures are relatively well picked up in terms of assignment. There was a couple where some guys came free, especially later, but there's also some of those like later in the down where it's like a delayed blitz situation. But there's some of those too where like that's the call and it's on Jaden to get the ball out. Like I remember one play, I don't remember where in the game, but like Luke McCaffrey realizes there's a corner blitz coming off of him, and Jaden like he's like, I'm hot, like I'm here right now. And Jaden is looking elsewhere. The blitz doesn't wind up getting home. I can't remember what happened on the play, but like it's good identification. You can see where it's built into the offense to help a guy out. And sometimes blitz pickup is on the quarterback to get the ball out. And I do feel like a lot of the pressures in the game were more guys losing than misidentifications in terms of like who they need to pick up. I do think there's some times in the run game, if I'm remembering correctly, where there might have been some missed targets. Some of those might have been on Jaden to like flip the play where you're like, I remember one in particular where like John Bates has got to seal the edge and the edge is lined up outside of him. Like it's a run to the left. Bates needs to get to the left of the edge to be able to then turn him back and have an alley behind him. And there's no way he's making that block. And to me, that's hey, we're running into a bad look. What are our options there? And Bates tries, and it doesn't get anywhere because you're running into a bad look. So it's stuff like that where I don't know if it's Biotish, if it's Daniels, but I think overall, like Biotish did a good job mostly with that stuff. My bigger gripe with Biotish is like, can you get a little more movement in the run game? I don't think that they got a ton up the gut there. I think they had some good stuff off Cosme and Wiley to the right. They had some good stuff to the other side occasionally, but I think most of their big runs, if I'm remembering, again, this is all up here off the noggin, were more like outside right or kind of in that B gap to the right between Cosme and Wiley. So a little more movement up front, I think, will be nice. But then again, I also don't really need to go too hard on Tyler Biotish because he's trying to move an actual mountain of a man.
Yeah.
Like moving Vita Vea sucks.
Not easy.
So that's the Tyler Biotish story.
Number two
in our pick 6, the left tackles. I already mentioned Coleman had that one miss, but I think overall he did a pretty good job. Like when he was in, I tried to lock in on him a little bit and see how he held up, and like he did an overall good job. There was one big, now is the time when I have too many notes. But there was like a huge hit. I think the biggest one of the game where Lucas missed. And I was like, that hurt. Ouchies. Lucas beat for sack. Yeah. So that was the first drive of the second half. The sack fumble, where our guy Tyler Biotish recovers it. Lucas got smoked on that one. But that happens, and overall he was fine. Got a couple of outside runs or outside screens where you're like, I would like someone to be out there a little bit faster because that's not Cornelius Lucas' strength. So I would say my takeaway from the left tackle performances are I'm excited for Brandon Coleman to take on more left tackle snaps. That's not that Lucas did a bad job, but when that job is Coleman's, this offense is better.
Number 3.
Oh boy, Anthony.
Man,
Number 3.
Number 3, them corners that we have out there, Benjamin St. Juste and Emmanuel Forbes. Now, I will say this. Mike Evans did not have over 100 yards, but still, he had
two touchdowns.
He had 2 touchdowns. He had some big catches. And also, Chris Godwin. They helped, both of those help convert a lot of third downs. I think when it comes to like Emmanuel Forbes, I think you touched on it earlier in the first intent. It's more so like his confidence is like, it seems shot.
Yeah.
And he has to be able to, play through mistakes, next play. Like that's what you got to do. And he's young. He's still developing. And I think he just has to get that through his head. But Benjamin St. Juste, the fact that he's very coachable. Dan Quinn, I actually talking about him earlier today as well.
I was going to say, I have the bite from last night. It's going to be pretty easy to see when Dan is talking about BSJ here. I would say a lot of the other stuff he said is about Emmanuel, even if he doesn't directly say it.
Yeah, discipline will win it, right? That's what I said. I thought it probably goes further than that. Discipline can also mean holding the right leverage, in a coverage. It can mean, the right gap sound. So I'd say it can probably expand bigger, but sometimes one thing compounds the next. And so when the time of possession, for instance, is that out of whack, I think that's directly correlated to third down. And they were probably close to 70%, and we were about 25%. So it wasn't like one team just controlled the ball on first and second down.
All right, let's get this is the bite that I thought
Yeah,
I
we just
hit.
rotated people around, and I think it comes from a place of competing and knowing how to, and knowing when to make the right decisions into those spaces. And so that's what we'll work on. Technique-wise, usually you ask a player, what'd you see? And if they know how to correct it already, then you're in a good spot. And that was Ben on the first touchdown to Evans. I need to turn the other way. I need to look, okay, you got it. If you ask a player, I don't know, that's a bigger concern. And so those guys know the things they need to work on, and that's why it did sting. And there's a lot for us to work on. But third downs, Nick, I would say collectively defensive. I wouldn't put it on one versus the other.
When he's talking about, if you look at a guy and you ask him what's up and he doesn't know, that's not good. That's Emmanuel Forbes. That's not good. Forbes was bad yesterday, just straight up bad. And I think there's not a lot of more weeks in that with the camp he had. He came on really strong at the end. He got his head on straight. He did the things they asked. He was playing good ball. But you got to do it in games. And ultimately, if the lights come on and you shrink away, that's not going to fly for this group. And I don't know what else they can do at corner. I don't know if there's someone they can go out inside. There's a veteran that's still being super patient. Guys like Gilmore have signed if they can make a trade, or whether they're just going to have to eat it for the rest of the year at that position. But if they decide, to me, Forbes is like Dotson. If you decide he's not it, it's time to go. It's time to move on. If you can trade him for something and someone else wants him, it was a first-round pick last year. You should be able to get a conditional something for him. But he's just not worth keeping around if he's not going to be part of the long term with his draft position and all that kind of stuff. Because you want to get a guy that can go play special teams or something like that, or to take Noah Igbenogany if he's going to be your guy off of special teams. Michael Davis if he's your guy, making sure that he doesn't have any team's responsibility. So I'm curious to see. And by the way, they did go Igbenogany. Was Davis
he didn't play?
Yeah, he was
on
didn't play
special
at all.
teams.
So I thought that was interesting as well. But by the same token, when you talk about the first bite that I played on accident, the discipline and leverage and that kind of stuff, some of that stuff's about Sanders still. He was a rookie in his first game, and so they all have their points to grow on. But with St. Juice, he's like, hey, I know what I did. I'll do better next time. He's got to do it because he also was like that last year. But I think this year I'm more inclined to believe him because of the coaching being better. Sanders still, he plays his ass off, dude. He is all over the tape. Unfortunately, sometimes he's behind where he needs to be, but you can see the makings of a great player. Emmanuel, your mama said you don't got nothing nice to say. You just...
Number 4.
All right, keeping it going here on our pick 6. Let's get quickly through the last few. Number 4, not much to say here. De'Ami Brown was a complete non-factor in this game. We thought he was going to be wide receiver 2 or be in that rotation, and instead it was Zacchaeus. Jameson Crowder was more involved. De'Ami was out there a little bit. He ran 15 routes in the game, but no targets. I guess in some ways I'm totally not surprised, but in another way, I'm kind of surprised because of how good the chemistry was between Daniels and De'Ami in camp and in the preseason. So if you can do it there, what's going on here? You got to figure that out. Or maybe they just like Zacchaeus better. They like, Zacchaeus, he had that one comeback route that was incomplete to him on the side.
Yep.
I thought he got held. But also it's not a great ball. That ball's too far inside. So again, sometimes the production is a quarterback thing. Sometimes it's a receiver thing. The bigger the sample size we get, though, the more we're going to figure out which end of the stick that's on.
But I'm not going to lie, Craig. We see a lot of, on those curl and comeback routes, we see a lot of receivers, throw off their arm because they are going to be held. So I think in one of those instances, I think Zacchaeus, he just got to play through it and get some separation. And I think...
Well, yeah, getting separation, that would be nice.
That's everybody, though, all of our receivers, to be honest. I mean, Terry had the go route where he was, wide open. But outside of that, I think as a unit, they all have to do a better job of just getting open.
No doubt. But they're also, only so talented, and that's a reality of the situation. Mixed bag for number 5.
Number 5.
Frankie Louvu, Anthony. What do you think of Frankie Louvu's day before I get into what I think and what I saw?
To me, it felt as though he was running around with a chicken with his head cut off. He was just all over the place, and not to say he was out of position, but to me it just seemed like he was always out of position kind of thing.
I don't know that I would say he was out of position a ton. I thought his usage was really interesting because they used him as a rusher in a lot of third down situations.
Yep.
Sometimes as a true edge, sometimes as a fifth guy, and they kind of move him around and line him up. And he had a couple of good rushes. I'm still not convinced that the best way to rush him is to not just use him as a blitzer, where he gets a running start off the ball. Again, it's something that, like, for all the talk about, like, Tampa's wide receivers and some of the plays that we're like, hey, or some of the places that we're like, hey, Tampa's really good and this is going to be a problem for Washington. We probably didn't talk about how good Tampa's O-line is enough. They're really, really good. And Baker's got great, connections with his receivers. So times that he has to throw quick, like, he's kind of on the same page. But dang, that Tampa offensive line is good. And so I want to see how they use Luvu in weeks to come and how he rushes against not Tristan Wirfs and some of the guys that they have in Tampa. But if that's what it's going to be, he just needs to play linebacker. But, again, some good rushes, but nothing where you're like, oh my God. As opposed to, like, Jamin has a couple plays as a run defender where you're like, oh my God, what if you could do that as a pass rusher? It just didn't see quite that pop from Luvu. But again, it's week one. And he did make a bunch of other plays. Like, he played well, I think, or played all right, I should say, as a linebacker.
Number 6.
Last guy, saved the best for last.
Yeah,
I thought Austin Eckler was awesome yesterday. He had one missed block in protection, but he had a bunch of other really good blocks. He ran effectively. He caught the ball and ran effectively. He's a good outlet. Like, Austin Eckler might have been the Commanders' player of the game yesterday. When you match the volume with the goodness, like, I don't know that there's anybody that played more better yesterday than Austin Eckler. Maybe Brian Robinson, which tells you where the strength of this team is. And I got to give credit to Cliff, too. One of the adjustments that I really liked in the second half from Cliff Kingsbury is they got away from some of the tight end stuff. I mean, they need to figure out how to get Sinnott a little bit more involved, I think, over the course of time. They'll figure that package out. But they were like, Eckler and Robinson are two of our, 3-4 best players. We need to get them dudes on the field. And so let's just put them out there together. And they did a really great job of being super multiple. Well, they were come back. They ran one, I think this was all in the same drive. They ran that, funky I formation thing where, B-Rob was in front of Austin next to Jaden in the gun. They had traditional, two backs on either side in the gun. They had one time where they were empty, and you almost, think of, the old school wing T, where you have, almost tight end wing type of players on the edge of the offensive line. One was Eckler, one was Robinson. So they did, and that was the play, I think, where Robinson had the 32-yarder. They snuck B-Rob across, and then Eckler wound up being a blocker downfield. So, there was just some really cool stuff that Cliff did with those two guys that I really, really like, and I'm encouraged about moving forward. But, obviously, the rest of the offense needs to join them. But Austin Eckler, loved what we saw yesterday from him. All right, when we get back, 301-230-0980 is the phone number. 301-230-0980. It's a Tell the Truth Monday. So you get to speak the truth / your truth about yesterday's game. 301-230-0980. Your call is next on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Anthony, I say we break off a little preview of what's to come. Next week we're gonna have a fully produced, like, open and everything for this. But just this is you said it's in the show elements, right?
Yes, sir.
This is the segment. This is the work in progress because, week one, it's a work in progress. And this just know the Open will get bigger and fancier next week.
It's Tell the Truth Monday on The Hoffman Show.
Yeah.
Call us now at 301-230-0980 to tell the truth about the Commanders. Or hit the comments section at the Team 980 on YouTube.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Let's get it, baby.
You can hit just I could have just done it with the NFL music the whole time, and no one would have known the difference.
That does sound cool.
But here's the deal. You're going to call us up at 301-230-0980, and in honor of Dan Quinn's Tell the Truth Monday, you are going to tell us the truth about the game. You can also drop a comment in the YouTube chat at the Team 980. Let's go to Jamal. Jamal, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
What's going on, fellas?
What's up, Jamal? Tell us the truth about what you thought about this game against the Bucs, and the truth coming out of it is?
The truth coming out of it is that I feel like we as a fan base, we overrate a lot of players there. Like, prior to watching that game, I like everyone else, saw Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Terry McLaurin were like primetime players. But as you look at other real players like Chris Jones, or you look at like a CeeDee Lamb, or you look like guys who really are what we say these guys are, they don't do that. And I'm not saying that they're bad players. They're not. But they just aren't what we talk about them to be as we do here. And I feel like that's evident. I mean, there's too many games with Terry McLaurin just doesn't make a catch to the second half, if at all. And I understand some of that isn't his fault. But, however, that doesn't happen to other guys who have probably the same or worse situation. I mean, hell, Devontae has been consistent, even with Minshew getting them killed. Like, there's other guys who just every year they seem to actually be what they are. And, again, that doesn't mean that these guys won't be good. But right now, they just aren't that. So that's the truth that I'm taking away from it, fellas. And I feel like we can still win 6 to 7 games.
All right, Jamal's phone is going. Oh, thanks, Jamal. Your phone was going out a little bit at the end, but I think it's a great call. I'm going to let you go because your phone's dying on me. But I think that's actually a great call from Jamal because I will be the first one to tell you that Jamal is correct. Terry McLaurin is not Justin Jefferson. He's not Devontae Adams. He's not CeeDee Lamb. He's not the best of the best in the NFL. But if you call me and tell me that Terry McLaurin sucks, I'm going to tell you you don't know anything about football, and I'm right. Because he doesn't suck. He's really exceptionally good, but he's not so good that he's situationally independent. He is reliant. I mean, to an extent, every receiver is, but it seems like Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, and like some of these guys always find a way, and Terry doesn't. If I was Cliff Kingsbury, I would make sure that Terry's getting those kinds of looks. I would be trying to force him the ball a little bit more, but even yesterday, it just doesn't have the target numbers. And I will say for Terry, I feel bad yesterday because if he has the one deep catch, that's not his fault. That's Jaden Daniels. He missed him. He's wide open. You have to put that ball on him. He ran right by the corner. And then later, he runs right by a corner and a safety, and Jaden looks to be staring right at him, and for some reason, he doesn't throw it. And, he has those 2 catches with the yardage that he has otherwise. We're talking about 2 catches for, or 4 or 5 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, and nobody's calling today saying Terry McLaurin's anything other than amazing, and why hasn't he just had a Jaden Daniels all along? And the truth would still be exactly what Jamal just said, which is that Terry is not the same player as like Justin Jefferson who just needs a quarterback. Those dudes are on a different level, but Terry's still really good. John Allen is really good, but he's not Chris Jones. He's not Aaron Donald. He's not the best of the best. I think that is an important caveat, and it's also why I keep telling everybody that'll listen that this team is years away because they need multiple blue chip players and they just don't seem to have any right now. I think there's at least 2 potentially on their roster. I think Sainer still could be an amazing nickel. I think Jaden could be a top-flight quarterback. It's going to take time because that's how it goes in this league. And if you look at rookies around the league, especially the quarterback position yesterday, we have plenty of proof of that. Tell the Truth Monday here on the Hoffman Show, 301-230-0980. Let's go to Vincent. Vincent, what you got for your truth on this Monday?
Well, the truth is, what I see is the same thing I've seen in Dallas with Dan Quinn. They can't stop the run, and the pass defense sucks. And the same thing Dallas was experienced with Dan Quinn, he comes in with the same identical thing. Put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, but in the same token, you can't stop a team from moving down the field. The team just went right down the field. Same thing they was doing when he was with Dallas.
I think that's an interesting call. I'll put it that way, Vincent. The thing is, Dan Quinn coordinated. I'm trying to pull up the stats so I make this exactly right here. But I am fairly certain that they were certainly a top half defense. Here we go. Total defense in points. They were top 5 2 years, 2 years in a row, top 10 all 3 years that he was in Dallas in points. So, you're going to have to miss me with the, they gave up so much. Their rush defense in Dallas, his 3 years, was 7th, 3rd, and 11th. So, I would hope that they can get to where they were in Dallas. But here's the big difference, right? Because in yards per attempt, they actually were back half of the league. But they were able to get ahead on teams because they had a better offense and Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and all those dudes. They were able to rush the passer and finish plays. They got teams in bad down and distances because they actually finished on the pass rush. And they were first, and 12th in takeaways. And that is going to be the key. Yes, you can move the ball on this style of defense. It's hyper aggressive and there are opportunities, but it comes at a risk. And unless that risk is realized with turnovers, it could be a long year for Washington. And also, again, defensively, this is much more a Jimmy's and Joe's problems than an X's and O's problem. Not that the X's and O's are perfect. Both things can be true. But they gotta improve that personnel on the defensive side of the ball. And I have a feeling that is a big investment they'll make in the next offseason. 301-230-0980. Tell the Truth Monday. Let's wrap up here with Darren. Darren, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig. Now, the truth of the matter, Craig, is we know it takes a time for the secondary to gel. We all know that, to get camaraderie. But if I said that correct word.
Camaraderie,
anyway,
that works. That works for me.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Thank you for accepting it. Craig, but the thing is this is the truth of the matter, my point. Is Terry McLaurin is number 2 receiver on any good team in the NFL. He is not a great number 1, some type of receiver that he wouldn't be a number 1 receiver, my point, on some of the better teams in the NFL. And these corners are only as good as the players they practice against. So if full strap up Terry in practice, of course the coaches are clapping their hands. Oh, good job. Yeah, he's balling, But he's doing it against basically a number 2 receiver. I think my point is this: they're only as good as the people they practice against. That's why Mike Evans, he burns everybody. That's why they take him for granted, take him for bad. And you see how soft Forbes is? I mean, Godwin just barely touched him, and he flew back a half a mile. I mean, they just push off of him so easy and get separation.
Yeah, Darren, I hear you. I appreciate the call, man. We got to run because we're up against the clock, but I appreciate it. And I think you raise an interesting point. I do think that there is potentially a false sense of security that we got lured into, certainly last year, and to a sense this year, about some of these corners that we thought may be able to step up because perhaps these wide receivers, or maybe even the inverse, right? We thought guys like De'Ami Brown might be taking a step because they were doing it against corners that turns out aren't very good. I will say, as someone who was at a lot of training camp practices, Emmanuel Forbes wasn't doing that great against Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin was very much the best receiver on the field by a lot in training camp, and he torched dudes deep consistently, torch dudes on shallow stuff consistently. Like Terry was making plays all over the place, so I don't get that. But when you say like, oh, Mike Evans torches everybody, like, yeah, he does. And so there is some of this that I think we have to take with not a grain of salt, but we have to be like, well, damn, that's a bad day at the office. At least we don't got to do that again next week. Now, you got 2 weeks. You got Jamar Chase. You got Malik Neighbors next week. But at least you don't have Mike Evans, a particularly large, big-bodied receiver that is a huge problem for the corners on this team historically. And for Forbes, yeah, he's got to play a lot tougher. He's got to play with a lot better leverage. He's got to play with more intensity and physicality. And if he doesn't, then he's going to be gone. And, you know, he did get better. And there is stuff you can evaluate based off of what you saw in camp. But bringing that to the field is no guarantee on Sundays. And Emmanuel didn't bring the good work he did in the last 2 weeks of camp to the field yesterday, which is why we saw the results that they did. That was so much better than when we did that at 4:30, Anthony. Don't tell the 4:30 people. Maybe it's because we played the open.
They're going to hear you.
Even if it was half-baked. Maybe it's because we played the open. The first 3 calls we got when we did Tell the Truth Monday at 4:30 are 3 of the 10 worst calls we've ever gotten in the entire show's history.
Somebody wasn't there. Somebody was talking to somebody else.
Then we just had one dude yelling.
That too. It was a lot going on.
There's a lot of stuff. I almost bagged the segment, but 6:30, I appreciate you. You saved the segment. Tell the Truth Monday returns next week, and hopefully we have some nicer things that we can say about a much better Commanders performance, and we'll have a fully baked open. Maybe they're waiting on us. Maybe this is our fault, Anthony. We're willing to look in the mirror and take responsibility. We're also willing to tell you what's trending and then wrap up our radio show. Sorry for the delay there. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Anthony, I don't know what you were laughing at over there, but I'm going to take the show in a slightly serious turn for a moment because the body cam footage from the Tyreek Hill arrest is out, and I didn't get a chance to watch it with the sound on. But from the second that they asked Tyreek Hill to open his door to his Lamborghini, they're yanking him out of the car. And there's just absolutely no way that is the proper procedure. 3-4 cops around him, just literally yanking him out of the car, mashing his face into the asphalt outside of Hard Rock Stadium. And it's just what are we? It was a traffic violation outside a football game for a dude driving a $250,000 car. Who did you think it was going to be when you opened the door? You think that dude's look, Tyreek Hill's done some other stuff that perhaps would cause him to be in handcuffs for good reason. If you don't know those stories, go to his Wikipedia page. It's a long little controversy section. Speeding, if that's indeed what he was doing, or whatever they accused him of here, is not a reason to yank someone out of a car and push them face down into the asphalt. What?
They said he didn't have his seatbelt on for one of them.
And his windows are stupidly tinted.
Yeah,
how could they tell?
Exactly.
How could they tell? I mean, I'm trying to be nice and also process this in real time and not say anything that's going to get me in trouble. I'm just going to be an adult here and hope that everyone listening can be an adult too. There's no reason that the same people that investigate and try to hunt down active, violent situations need to be the one issuing traffic tickets. Because the training that you need to undergo to break up a violent situation, let's say, is different than, hey man, can you slow down? What are we doing here? And at that point, if the training you get is to break up a violent situation, and that's all the training you have, that's how you get pulling someone out of a car, mashing their face down into the asphalt for driving too fast to their own football game. You practice. Here's the sports analogy to this. This is a real life topic that I perhaps will put some more thoughtful pros to tomorrow if we learn more, because I'm guessing more will come out, especially now that this body cam footage is out. But you practice how you play, or you play how you practice. And if practice is nothing but violent situations, then every situation you get in is going to be a violent situation. And that's just not, I will say this, personally, it's not the way I want to be policed. I don't think anybody else listening wants to either. Do I want police that are capable of breaking up in case there is an actual violent situation? Absolutely. That's not, this is not having public safety be the top priority. It's actually public safety being the top priority. And there's just no way a situation like this could happen. And to be honest, it happens in America at a rate it doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. And specifically, if we really want to go there and we really want to be adults, it happens to black men in America at rates it doesn't happen to anyone else too. And it's I am no Tyreek Hill fan personally because of a lot of other stuff he's done that, again, could have rightfully had him whisked away in handcuffs. But this is ridiculous. There's just absolutely no justification for the escalation that took place yesterday outside of Hard Rock Stadium. That's that. That's my Tell the Truth Monday. You practice you play how you practice. Why is people say you practice how you play? It's the other way around. Because isn't that what people normally say? You practice how you play? Or is my brain totally mush from...
Yeah, you practice how you play.
But it should be you play how you practice. Because you practice first and then you play.
Yeah, but you spend so much more time practicing, so how you practice is how you should play.
Oh. I see. You practice how you play.
Yeah.
Anthony, what was your favorite part of the show today?
Favorite part of the show today.
That people like Robert from the 4 o'clock hour can go listen to on the podcast. Because as Robert learned real quick, there's no excuse for missing the show. If you like the show, we make it way too available for you to go find it.
I would have to say me going around the NFL and me having to accept, all right, Josh Allen, he might not be as bad as I, thought he was. He's still not in my top 5, but, he had a good outing against the Cardinals, but, it was the Cardinals at the end of the day.
Sure, but he was great.
He was great. It's okay, though. I can accept that maybe I was wrong.
By the way,
we'll see at the end of the season.
Speaking of you being wrong, what were our records and picks? We never said that out loud into microphones.
Yeah, you had a great outing this week. You 11-4 for Craig. Do I really need to say mine?
I mean, I feel like it'd be kind of rude not to.
7-8 for yours truly.
Damn!
Hey, yo!
I got a 4-game lead
It's
already.
early. I know, man. It's early. Hopefully the Jets give me one back, though, baby. Let's go.
Oh,
they gonna give me one
boy.
back, Craig. Trust it.
Oh,
Trust it.
boy.
They gonna give me one back.
Okay.
You'll see.
Okay. All right. We done in 10 seconds?
I think so. Yep.
Okay. That's our show. Thanks for listening. If you miss any part of it, check out the podcast, and we'll see you tomorrow.